Immigration has been presented as an essential feature of modern societies, with claims that it supports economic growth, addresses demographic imbalances, and fosters cultural enrichment. These assertions rest on premises that do not align with the realities of self-sufficient communities and technological capabilities. Human existence and societal function do not require constant population inflows, as historical societies thrived through local production and community structures without reliance on mass migration. The modern global system of trade and commerce provides ample means for acquiring goods and services without the physical relocation of people. This analysis demonstrates that immigration, in its current scale and form, is unnecessary and often counterproductive, serving instead as a mechanism for social, political, and economic agendas that prioritize specific interests over the well-being of existing populations. The economic justifications for immigration, which emphasize labor shortages, GDP expansion, and tax revenue generation, crumble under scrutiny. Economies exist to serve the people within them, not to demand perpetual population growth to prop up cyclical systems of banking and taxation. Historical societies operated effectively through agricultural means and localized economic arrangements, demonstrating that human existence and enjoyment do not depend on the modern financial apparatus. The insistence on immigration as an economic necessity is a fallacy that masks the inflation of governmental and corporate needs, where bloated budgets and corrupt collusions benefit a political and investment class at the expense of the broader populace. Immigration does not genuinely enhance the economy for those already present. It frequently undercuts wages, displaces workers, and shifts costs onto taxpayers. Furthermore, the demographic and political dimensions of immigration reveal a self-reinforcing cycle that undermines sovereignty and social cohesion. Inflows alter the composition of the population, creating new voter bases that support further liberalization, locking in policies that favor expansion over restriction. Cultural and environmental concerns compound these issues, as rapid changes strain resources, dilute established norms, and reduce trust within communities. Security and rule of law considerations highlight additional strains, where unmanaged migration introduces risks and erodes the foundational principles of national control. Across these domains, the arguments in favor of immigration lack validity, as they advance ulterior objectives rather than addressing genuine requirements. The following sections explore these elements in depth, establishing that valid reasons against immigration exist comprehensively, while pro-immigration positions do not hold. Economic fallacies and harms of immigration. The assertion that immigration is indispensable for economic development rests on the flawed premise that sustained growth demands continuous additions to the labor force and consumer base. In advanced economies characterized by high productivity, automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, and efficient supply chains, existing populations possess the capacity to maintain and elevate output without requiring population increases. Technological integration enables fewer workers to produce more, meeting domestic demands while freeing resources for innovation rather than expansion. The notion that tax revenue, cyclical economic activity, or banking stability hinge on immigration disregards the self-sustaining potential of current workforces through local production, trade networks, and internal resource allocation. Economies function as instruments to serve the people within them, not as autonomous entities that necessitate perpetual demographic growth to validate their structure. Historical agricultural societies and community-based systems operated successfully for millennia without modern financial dependencies, relying on mutual support, barter, and localized trade to achieve human flourishing independent of mass migration or global capital flows. Fiscal claims promoting immigration as a net contributor to public finances ignore the substantial and often unrecovered costs imposed at state and local levels. Education, healthcare, housing, and welfare expenditures for new arrivals and their dependents frequently exceed tax contributions, particularly in the early years and for lower-skilled inflows. Native and established workers end up subsidizing these services through their taxes, while simultaneously facing wage suppression in sectors flooded by additional labor supply. This creates a direct transfer of resources from contributors to newcomers, fostering dependency rather than mutual benefit. The economic rationale conflates the preservation of bloated governmental budgets and corporate profit margins with genuine societal needs, where immigration sustains expansive, corrupt cycles of spending and extraction. Families and communities have historically generated sufficient resources without external population additions through self-reliant agricultural practices and non-monetary cooperation, proving that authentic economic stability does not require immigration. Immigration systematically undercuts the bargaining power of the existing workforce, displacing workers in agriculture, construction, manufacturing, hospitality, and service industries. Corporations exploit the influx of lower-cost labor to maintain high margins, suppress wage growth, and weaken union influence, while the host population absorbs the social and fiscal consequences. Technology already diminishes the demand for physical labor, rendering immigration-driven recruitment artificial and unnecessary. Arguments that more people are essential to sustain pension systems or counteract aging populations fail when internal solutions, such as extended working lives, productivity enhancements, and adjusted retirement structures, can address demographic imbalances without external dependency. Immigration does not deliver genuine economic improvement for the resident population. It instead advances ulterior layers of corporate profit, political leverage, and financial ecosystem maintenance. Valid economic reasoning prioritizes the well-being of those already present, advocating self-reliant mechanisms that reject immigration as a tool for propping up predatory systems. The broader economic critique exposes immigration as a mechanism that inflates artificial necessities within the global financial order. By importing labor and consumers, policies sustain debt-driven growth models, speculative investment cycles, and centralized control over resources, all of which benefit elite classes rather than ordinary citizens. The claim of labor shortages or economic stagnation without immigration serves to justify exploitation while diverting attention from domestic training, wage incentives, and technological investment. In a world where automation and innovation reduce the role of manual labor, the persistence of immigration for economic purposes reveals its role in preserving outdated structures of dependency and inequality. Societies can achieve prosperity and stability through internal means alone, making immigration not only redundant but actively harmful to the economic interests of the host population across every dimension. Demographic and political feedback loops. Demographic shifts induced by immigration establish a self-perpetuating cycle that fundamentally transforms the political landscape. Large-scale inflows result in naturalization processes and the maturation of U.S.-born children into voting citizens, creating expanding blocs that, on average, align with parties and platforms advocating continued or expanded immigration policies. This ratchet mechanism progressively alters electoral math, rendering restrictive reforms politically costly or infeasible as the composition of the electorate shifts in favor of liberalization. The dynamic is structural rather than incidental, consolidating power for those entities, political parties, advocacy networks, and aligned interests that gain from sustained inflows. Over decades, the cycle locks in higher migration levels irrespective of the original population's preferences, entrenching policies that prioritize expansion over sovereignty or cohesion. The superficial claim that new citizens merely exercise legitimate democratic rights obscures the engineered nature of the shift, which systematically advantages one ideological trajectory. The political dimension operates as a deliberate strategy to engineer long-term electoral dominance. Parties and organized interests actively promote inflows with full awareness that resulting demographic changes will produce voter majorities supportive of their agendas, including expansive welfare, redistribution, and cultural policies. This is not an organic demographic evolution driven by neutral forces, but a calculated intervention to reshape the citizenry in ways that secure enduring control. Once the cycle gains momentum, reversal becomes improbable, as opposing positions risk alienating the growing bloc. Demographic projections depicting inevitable shifts in ethnic or cultural composition arise directly from policy decisions that favor certain outcomes, not from immutable trends. Valid opposition in this domain centers on safeguarding the existing balance of power and affirming the citizenry's exclusive right to determine membership and future direction without external demographic engineering. This feedback loop extends into profound social and cultural consequences, where accelerated demographic alteration erodes cohesion, mutual trust, and shared identity. Rapid changes foster parallel communities, reduce social capital, and heighten demands for state mediation of conflicts, weakening the foundations of unified governance. The political reinforcement of immigration policies intensifies these divisions, fragmenting the polity into competing identity groups rather than a cohesive whole. Claims that immigration bolsters democracy through diversified voices disregard the manner in which it splinters collective decision-making and empowers centralized authority to manage resulting tensions. Valid critiques insist on the necessity of stable, homogeneous societies capable of self-determination free from imposed external pressures. The cycle itself proves the invalidity of pro-immigration stances, as they facilitate a process that subordinates the interests of the host population to the imperatives of expansion and control. The full scope of the demographic political loop reveals immigration as a tool for long-term power reconfiguration rather than a benign policy. By altering the electorate in predictable ways, it ensures that future generations inherit a transformed political order aligned with specific agendas. This structural bias undermines the principle of self-governance, as the original citizenry loses effective control over foundational questions of membership and national character. The mechanism operates across generations, making short-term policy adjustments insufficient to arrest the trajectory. Recognition of this dynamic demands rejection of immigration as a neutral or beneficial force, affirming instead the imperative to halt inflows and restore demographic and political equilibrium in service of the existing population's autonomy and continuity. Cultural, social, sovereignty, and environmental dimensions. Cultural cohesion deteriorates under the pressure of large-scale immigration, as sustained inflows introduce norms, languages, and practices that diverge sharply from established traditions. This divergence fosters the emergence of parallel societies where integration remains limited and daily interactions between groups diminish. The resulting fragmentation erodes the shared cultural framework that once enabled mutual understanding and collective action within communities. Historical societies characterized by high cultural homogeneity exhibited stronger bonds of trust and cooperation, facilitating efficient social organization and resilience in the face of challenges. In contrast, periods of rapid and extensive mixing frequently generated persistent friction, identity conflicts, and a decline in voluntary civic participation. The claim that diversity inherently enriches society disregards these measurable reductions in social capital, which manifest as lower community engagement, weakened informal networks, and heightened reliance on formal state mechanisms to manage tensions. Valid arguments against immigration therefore prioritize the safeguarding of cultural continuity, recognizing that shared values, customs, and historical narratives form the foundation for smooth societal function and long-term stability. Social dynamics suffer additional strain from the rapid demographic changes immigration imposes. Communities experience a decline in interpersonal trust as familiar patterns of interaction give way to uncertainty and perceived incompatibility. This erosion of social trust translates into reduced willingness to cooperate on local initiatives, volunteerism, or mutual aid, further weakening the informal structures that traditionally support societal well-being. The introduction of diverse value systems often requires constant negotiation and accommodation, consuming energy that could otherwise strengthen internal bonds. Over time, these pressures contribute to social balkanization, where groups retreat into enclaves and public discourse becomes polarized around identity rather than shared purpose. The notion that such changes foster vibrancy overlooks the tangible costs in diminished cohesion and increased social friction. Valid critiques maintain that protection of established social fabric is essential, as cohesive societies rely on common reference points to resolve disputes and pursue collective goals without external mediation. Sovereignty faces direct erosion when immigration proceeds without effective regulation or when policies deliberately circumvent established legal frameworks. Borders serve as the primary mechanism for preserving the polity as a self-governing entity, allowing the existing citizenry to determine who joins the political community and under what conditions. Uncontrolled or unmanaged inflows undermine this authority, transferring effective control over membership to external forces or opportunistic actors. The fundamental principle that only the current population possesses the legitimate right to define inclusion becomes diluted, opening the door to influences that serve foreign or transnational interests rather than domestic priorities. Security vulnerabilities arise from inadequate vetting and exploitation of asylum or entry systems, introducing risks of crime, systemic abuse, and threats to public safety. Arguments invoking humanitarian obligations falter when they compromise the host society's capacity to enforce order and protect its members. Restoration of sovereign control over borders and entry remains a core valid reason against expansive immigration, as it upholds the essential right of self-determination. Environmental and resource pressures constitute an additional critical dimension of harm. Additional population from immigration intensifies demand on finite housing stocks, water supplies, energy infrastructure, and land use, accelerating degradation in already strained systems. In regions with limited carrying capacity, these increases compound urban sprawl, congestion, and ecological footprint expansion without delivering proportional advantages to the resident population. Natural systems face heightened extraction and pollution loads, while public infrastructure, roads, schools, hospitals, experiences overload that outpaces maintenance and expansion efforts. Aesthetic and civilizational continuity also suffer, as rapid demographic turnover disrupts the historical character of built environments, landscapes, and communal spaces that embody accumulated cultural achievement. Rapid change replaces organic evolution with imposed discontinuity, diminishing the sense of place and shared heritage. These environmental and aesthetic concerns reinforce the invalidity of pro-immigration arguments, which subordinate practical sustainability and stability to abstract notions of openness. The valid stance insists on preserving cohesive, sovereign, and ecologically balanced communities by limiting inflows that impose disproportionate burdens. Ulterior motivations and subversive agendas. Publicly articulated arguments for immigration conceal a network of deeper motivations centered on power consolidation, financial gain, and structural control. Economic rationales primarily advance corporate agendas that rely on expanded labor supplies to maintain low wages, weaken collective bargaining, and maximize profit margins across industries dependent on low-cost workers. This dynamic creates a permanent underclass that benefits employers while shifting social costs onto the broader tax base. Political incentives drive support for inflows that cultivate expanding voter blocs predisposed to favor policies of continued liberalization, welfare expansion, and cultural permissiveness, thereby securing long-term electoral dominance. The resulting self-reinforcing loop ensures that demographic shifts progressively entrench the very policies that initiated them. Financial ecosystems thrive on high migration volumes, sustaining budgets and employment for resettlement organizations, legal service providers, shelter operators, and related contractors through government grants and private funding tied to arrival numbers. These intersecting layers illustrate immigration as a deliberate instrument deployed by aligned interests whose objectives diverge from the welfare of the host population. Social fragmentation emerges as a predictable and functional outcome within this framework. Rapid demographic diversification reduces overall cohesion, lowering social trust and voluntary cooperation while increasing dependence on centralized authority to mediate conflicts and provide services. This outcome aligns with ideological projects that seek to diminish strong national identities in favor of fluid, borderless arrangements amenable to global governance structures. Humanitarian rhetoric and appeals to compassion serve as effective shields, deflecting scrutiny and moralizing opposition as intolerance. The process proceeds with minimal resistance precisely because public discourse frames it as virtuous progress rather than calculated transformation. Criminal and exploitative networks, trafficking rings, smuggling operations, and underground labor markets gain sustenance from lax enforcement and porous systems, generating profits that indirectly reinforce the status quo through economic entanglement. These elements collectively expose the invalidity of surface-level pro-immigration positions, which function as vehicles for advancing concentrated power rather than addressing genuine societal needs. The convergence of economic, political, financial, and social agendas transforms immigration into a multifaceted mechanism sustained despite the absence of authentic necessity. Each layer reinforces the others. Corporate demand for labor supports political expansion of supportive demographics, which in turn secures funding streams for advocacy networks, while social fragmentation reduces organized resistance to the overall project. The absence of genuine requirement for inflows underscores the instrumental nature of the practice. Valid analysis identifies these intersections and calls for policies that reject external pressures in favor of internal priorities. This perspective clarifies why arguments advocating immigration ultimately advance specific, non-public interests over the requirements of human flourishing and societal integrity within existing communities. Recognition of these layered motivations demands a comprehensive reevaluation of immigration policy. When stripped of rhetorical cover, the practice reveals itself as a tool for maintaining and expanding control structures rather than a response to unavoidable conditions. Economic pretexts mask wage suppression and profit extraction. Political justifications conceal demographic engineering. Financial incentives perpetuate dependency on volume-driven funding, and social outcomes facilitate ideological realignment. The valid critique insists on dismantling these mechanisms to restore focus on the existing population's cohesion, prosperity, and autonomy. By exposing the subversive character of prevailing arguments, the analysis affirms that immigration serves ulterior ends and holds no legitimate place in a framework dedicated to authentic human and communal requirements. Alternatives and the unnecessity of immigration. Self-sufficiency stands as the foundational alternative to immigration, rooted in the proven capacity of human societies to sustain themselves without external population inflows. Throughout history, families and communities have relied on agricultural production, local resource management, and mutual support networks to meet all essential needs. These arrangements enabled thriving civilizations long before the emergence of global financial systems or mass migration policies. In the present era, such self-reliance remains fully viable, supported by modern tools that enhance productivity on smaller scales. Families can cultivate land, engage in small-scale trade, or participate in community-based economies that prioritize internal needs over expansive growth. This model eliminates the necessity of importing labor or consumers, as existing populations possess the means to generate sufficient goods, services, and sustenance through established local and national structures. The historical record confirms that human existence and societal function do not depend on continuous demographic expansion, but on intelligent use of available resources within defined boundaries. Targeted aid delivered directly to people in their countries of origin represents a superior humanitarian pathway that circumvents the domestic harms associated with immigration. Global charitable organizations already possess the infrastructure to transfer money, medical supplies, food, educational materials, and development resources to those facing hardship abroad. This approach addresses root causes of migration, poverty, conflict, and environmental stress, without relocating individuals to host countries where they impose fiscal burdens, strain welfare systems, and compete for jobs. Individuals or groups motivated by compassion can travel to affected regions to provide hands-on assistance, volunteer in community projects, or support local initiatives on site. Travel technology and affordable transportation make such direct engagement feasible and effective. By keeping aid external, host societies avoid the subversive effects of mass inflows, including wage suppression, cultural fragmentation, and political feedback loops that favor further liberalization. This method fulfills moral obligations more efficiently, preserving the integrity of receiving nations while delivering genuine relief where it is most needed. Technological advancement decisively undermines any claim that immigration remains necessary for labor or economic vitality. Automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, and advanced machinery now perform a wide range of physical, repetitive, and even complex tasks with greater efficiency and lower long-term costs than human labor. These innovations allow societies to maintain or elevate living standards with stable or even declining populations, rendering the traditional labor shortage rationale obsolete. High productivity per worker means fewer people can produce more output, supporting robust economies without the need to import additional bodies. Demographic pressures, such as aging populations, can be managed through internal adjustments, extended working lives, improved health care, and incentives for native birth rates, rather than relying on external inflows that alter societal composition. Valid policy frameworks, therefore, concentrate on maximizing the potential of current residents through education, training, and technological integration, ensuring that economic and social systems serve the existing population rather than demanding perpetual replenishment from outside. In a world interconnected by global trade, instantaneous communication, and rapid travel, the unnecessity of immigration becomes self-evident. Goods, services, knowledge, and capital move freely across borders without requiring the permanent relocation of people. Local production, supplemented by international commerce, meets material needs effectively, while charitable and developmental aid flows in the opposite direction to support those in distress. Pro-immigration arguments collapse when confronted with these realities, as they depend on manufactured dependencies that ignore self-sufficiency, technological redundancy, and the availability of non-migratory solutions. The valid stance rejects immigration as both unnecessary and detrimental, prioritizing the cohesion, sovereignty, and well-being of existing populations through self-reliant structures and targeted external support. This orientation safeguards societal stability and human flourishing without the risks inherent in large-scale demographic change. Conclusion: the imperative of restriction toward self-determined and cohesive societies. The examination of immigration unequivocally demonstrates its fundamental unnecessity in contemporary society. Across economic, demographic, cultural, sovereignty, and environmental domains, large-scale inflows consistently produce harms that outweigh any purported benefits. The stated justifications, whether framed as economic necessity, humanitarian duty, or demographic correction, collapse under scrutiny, revealing themselves as layered pretexts for ulterior social, political, and financial agendas. Self-sufficiency through advanced technology, automation, and localized production, combined with direct aid delivered to people in their countries of origin, provides far superior alternatives that eliminate the domestic costs, wage suppression, fiscal burdens, and social fragmentation associated with immigration. Valid reasons against immigration exist comprehensively and hold firm in every context, confirming that policies of restriction serve the genuine interests and well-being of existing populations. Historical evidence and practical realities further affirm that human societies have long prospered without reliance on perpetual population growth or the modern financial apparatus. Agricultural self-reliance, community-based mutual support, and non-monetary systems enabled thriving civilizations for millennia, proving that existence, enjoyment, and societal function do not require immigration or the inflationary cycles of global commerce and banking it is used to sustain. In the present era, tools such as AI, robotics, and efficient supply chains render physical labor migration obsolete, while global travel and charitable networks allow assistance to reach those in need without relocating populations across borders. The insistence on immigration as indispensable ignores these capabilities and instead perpetuates a predatory system designed to benefit corporate, political, and investment classes at the expense of the host society. The self-reinforcing political and demographic feedback loops expose the most insidious dimension of current immigration practices. Inflows create expanding voter blocs that favor continued liberalization, locking in policies that erode sovereignty, alter national character, and undermine the self-determination of the original citizenry. This cycle is not an accidental byproduct, but a structural mechanism that advances power consolidation, cultural dilution, and resource strain under the guise of progress and compassion. Valid critiques recognize these dynamics as deliberate rather than inevitable, emphasizing the imperative to halt the process before irreversible shifts occur. Ultimately, the case against immigration stands as comprehensive, coherent, and grounded in the core realities of human existence, societal stability, and self-governance. By rejecting fallacious pro-immigration arguments and embracing the full spectrum of valid objections, from economic self-sufficiency and technological redundancy to sovereignty preservation and direct global aid, societies can reclaim control over their future. The unnecessity of immigration is clear, the harms are demonstrable, and the path forward lies in prioritizing the cohesion, resources, and autonomy of those already present. Restriction emerges not as exclusion, but as responsible stewardship, ensuring stable, prosperous, and self-determined communities for generations to come. In addition, immigration stands exposed as an entirely unnecessary and actively destructive force in contemporary society. The persistent claims of economic necessity, demographic requirement, humanitarian duty, and cultural benefit collapse under examination, revealing themselves as fabricated pretexts for agendas that serve narrow interests at the expense of the host population. Every layer of justification, whether framed as labor market solutions, fiscal contributions, or moral imperatives, functions only to sustain corporate profit extraction, political power consolidation, financial industry enrichment, and ideological projects aimed at eroding national sovereignty and social cohesion. The self-reinforcing voter cycle, wage suppression, fiscal transfers from natives to newcomers, resource strain, cultural fragmentation, and security vulnerabilities demonstrate that immigration delivers no genuine advantage to those already within the borders, while imposing measurable and escalating costs across every domain. The modern global order of trade, technology, automation, and instantaneous communication renders mass population movement obsolete. Societies possess the means to achieve abundance, maintain demographic stability, and fulfill humanitarian obligations without importing individuals who then become dependents on domestic systems or competitors in domestic labor markets. Direct aid, targeted charitable transfers, and voluntary travel to assist people in their countries of origin provide superior mechanisms for addressing hardship, mechanisms that avoid the importation of social problems, the dilution of established communities, and the subversion of self-determination. Historical evidence of thriving agricultural, family-based, and community-centered existence without reliance on global financial cycles or perpetual population growth further confirms that human flourishing has never depended on immigration and does not depend on it now. In the final analysis, immigration in its present scale and form constitutes a weaponized policy tool wielded by entities pursuing money, control, demographic engineering, and the weakening of cohesive polities. The valid position is unequivocal rejection. Restriction, border enforcement, and internal self-reliance represent the only rational course for preserving sovereignty, economic integrity, cultural continuity, and the well-being of the existing citizenry. Any continuation of large-scale immigration perpetuates harm while advancing agendas antithetical to the interests of the people already present. The necessity of immigration is a myth. The arguments supporting it are invalid. The reasons opposing it are comprehensive and irrefutable. Societies that recognize this reality and act accordingly secure their future. Those that do not condemn themselves to continued erosion and exploitation.